To Judy Duncan this morning, head organizer of Acorn Canada and founding organizer of Acorn Canada, just about her perspectives here, looking over the last number of years about where we've been, where we're going. How are you this morning, Judy?
I'm good. Happy about my coffee.
Happy. A little coffee and chicory from down south. So how long have we been here working at Acorn Canada?
We started organizing in 2004 in August, so in August this year that'll be 8 years.
And where have we been and where are we now? I mean, we started here in Toronto, I know.
Yeah, so we have a field program in Toronto, and then we opened up our BC office. So we have, the office is in New Westminster, but we have that services membership in Surrey, Burnaby, and Vancouver, and increasingly the surrounding areas into like Chilliwack, and we're thinking of doing a blitz into Nanaimo soon. So,
you know, somehow we should be in towns called Nanaimo and Chilliwack.
Chilliwack.
that makes us even more Canadian than the maple leaf.
And then we opened up the Ottawa office, and we have 4 chapters there, and we have 1 chapter in Hamilton, and most recently we opened up, it's kind of a bit of a pilot project in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, where we have a member there who's doing the organizing, but he's built up a smaller base of people that have gotten some traction on local housing issues with our Healthy Homes campaign, and also partnering with the local labor council there on fighting the utility company.
A little bit like we've done in Italy and Prague, but we'll come back to that. There may be a model. I know you're looking at that as a way to expand throughout the country. So obviously starting an organization is never easy. You sort of parachuted into Toronto here, and where did you start?
So I worked in Seattle for 1.5 years before I came back to Canada, and before I moved back I kind of looked at maybe moving to Vancouver because I had gone to school there. Or coming to Toronto, but the kind of statistics of how the neighborhoods were laid out with like the poverty statistics, Toronto looked like a better place to start.
And so what did we first do? We started driving all around the neighborhoods, as I recall.
Yeah, we looked at
back in the car days.
Yeah, before my car died. Looked at the United Way's Poverty by Postal Code report, and then from that drove around the 13 priority neighborhoods that they had identified, and some other ones that we had gotten from various researchers, and decided to start door knocking in Weston. So that was where we did the first organizing drive, and that's still a super strong chapter. Still have great leaders there.
And Western is in what part of Toronto?
It's in the inner suburbs. So how Toronto's laid out is the downtown is quite affluent because the real estate values are so high, but in the rings around that is where most of the low and moderate income people live. So it's on the northwest side, but medium, not super far out.
And Scarborough is, I know, someplace we spent a lot of time looking with our necks craned up into the sky at those high-rise apartments. And where is Scarborough in relation to Weston?
Scarborough's on the east side.
East side.
Yeah.
And we're in Scarborough now as well.
Yeah, we have 2 chapters in Scarborough, one in Gordon Ridge and one in Eglinton East, and that includes like Scarborough Village and like Scarborough Centre.
And how far is Scarborough from, say, the center of Toronto?
It's about an hour transit ride. Same with Weston.
Right. And what kind of population lives in these neighborhoods?
Well, Toronto's a very diverse city, so every door you knock on, you're talking to somebody that's potentially from somewhere else around the world. Super diverse. They're not very, very ethnically clustered as you would maybe find in an American city. And a lot of people from the Caribbean, a lot of people from like Southeast Asia, a lot of people from like India, Pakistan, a lot of people from a lot of places.
Why is that?
Well, up until recently, Canada had a pretty open immigration policy and took a lot of refugees as well. So I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but there's a huge number of new Canadians that move into Canada every year, and they generally land in like the bigger centers like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Ottawa.
And so we here we have one of the more cosmopolitan cities in the world, we often read.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's about 45% foreign born.
And that's reflected in your leadership over the last 8 years, isn't it?
Yeah, our board is very diverse and, you know, basically pretty much reflects what the membership is.
Kate Desna is the president of Acorn Canada now. She's from where?
Trinidad, yeah. Kay's from, she was a teacher in Trinidad and came here as a refugee originally. Marva's originally from St. Vincent. They've both been in Canada for like 20 years.
Yeah. So, but most people are not home owners here in terms of the constituents we organize.
In Toronto, yeah, we're a pretty heavy tenant base. In Ottawa and Vancouver, it's a bigger mix of homeowners or condo owners and tenants.
Well, in the United States, I know when we first were looking at Toronto, we sort of had a bias that organizing tenants were heavily transient. We'd have difficulty stabilizing an organization, but the nature of tenancy here in Toronto has actually given us a different experience, hasn't it?
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, I mean, if people are in social housing, they often don't move because there's an 8-year wait list to get into social housing. So if you finally get a unit, you're sticking in that unit, and it's really hard to get transfers, which is actually a problem.
And social housing is income-based?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Section 8 in the States.
Like public housing in the States?
Yeah,
right.
public housing. And people who live in the market rent high rises, which are, you know, are the 80, so there's 80,000 people on the wait list to get into the social housing. They generally reside in the market rent buildings, and they're a little bit more transient, but they also, you know, if they do move, they often move into another neighborhood that Acorn's in, and, you know, hopefully we've had enough of a relationship with them that they, like, update their contact info with us. And as the nature of telephones are moving from landlines to cell phones, people will keep their number as they move, so.
And of course, bank draft dues helps you keep up with people as well.
Yeah.
In a way that 30 years ago would have been very difficult if you were a tenant moving to keep that dues hand collected.
Yeah.
So, what kind of campaigns have you found yourself involved in because of the tenant base?
Well, in Toronto, we originally launched our affordable and livable housing campaign in 2005, which we were had working with a councillor in Jane and Finch to get a landlord licensing motion introduced into City Council, and you know, we fought hard to get that passed. And what we went out of that was an MRAP program, which was a really souped-up audit program. That was somewhat proactive. So we wanted a proactive enforcement system. And so, you know, that was a big victory. There was $100 million invested in the first year of that from the private landlords into the buildings. There's a new mayor in the city now, so that department, it seems like they're not quite as aggressive as they were before. In BC, in Surrey, we just launched a Healthy Homes campaign, because even though Toronto is so problematic with its housing, it actually has good municipal code. What it's missing is the enforcement. In Surrey, they didn't even have the municipal code, so we were fighting for a Healthy Homes bylaw there. And about a month ago, they introduced one, so that was a huge victory out there. And in Ottawa, we're fighting for the similar type of thing, because they also don't have very good laws in the municipal code around tenant rights. And in Cape Breton, we've also launched a Healthy Homes campaign. This is also reflected in our larger provincial platforms around tenant rights. In Ontario, we're fighting for to close up the vacancy decontrol, where if people move out of their apartment, the landlords can just jack the rent. So in a city where there actually is a bit of movement, or quite a bit of movement in the private rental stock, people move, the rent goes up, and so the rent control that exists if you just stay in your unit doesn't really apply. So because it's a minority government, we're hoping we have some opportunity there.
Healthy Homes is a good name for it. It's essentially a building codes campaign.
Yeah.
But Healthy Homes, like living wages, that's a good name for.
Yeah. Our leaders
how do you oppose healthy homes?
You can't oppose healthy homes.
Although, you know, in the States, I would wonder, does that mean there's lead in those houses or whatever? But
Yeah.
and so we just passed Surrey, no? Or did the
Yes.
bylaw pass?
Yeah.
So this looks like it's going to catch fire throughout the country.
Yeah.
And that's been an effort for us. And speaking of living wages, I know we sort of led the country in passing the first living wage. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the leadership in New Westminster, working with an ally on council, Jamie McAvoy, introduced and then won the first living wage bylaw in the country in that municipality. So all government contracts at the city level and employees there had to be paid $16.74 an hour, which was like a year and a half ago now, so that's actually increased now. So that was a huge victory, and our members were really excited about that. And we haven't really gotten traction in any other communities that we're working in, but soon. I know Hamilton's been really moving along with it, and there's a couple other communities across Canada that have been.
Because some communities had tried to get some form of living wage bylaw or ordinance and failed, hadn't they?
Yeah, Calgary got shot down. I think Waterloo got shot down.
And
I think
how,
Esquimalt actually passed one.
How did they? What did they try to do that was different than what succeeded in New Westminster?
Well, I think what made New Westminster successful was that there was actually a big base of community support lobbying on the city council to make sure that they supported it. That was what we'd focused on, and our membership was, I can't remember how many petitions that we got, handed into the city in support of it, but.
There's sometimes large issues about how to come up with the right number. Was that a problem in New Westminster, or was that pretty easy for us to do?
Well, in New Westminster, we were working with the BC CCPA, and so in partnership with them, they actually came up with the number. So they came up with the family living wage, which is a very high number, but luckily New Westminster is quite progressive, so we were able to win that. So, I think it's important.
That's been harder for some other communities because
Yeah.
the number tends to be pretty steep.
Yeah, well, both Ottawa, with Acorn, Ottawa,
Yeah, tell me about that.
they used an individual number which was a bit lower, around 1370, and they didn't even win that. So, and I think Calgary went with a lower number and then got shot down as well. So.
And what is the federal minimum wage in Canada if I were trying to compare that minimum in the provinces to the living wage that was won in New West or tried for in Ottawa?
The minimum wage is provincial. So in Ontario it's $10.25. BC
so Ottawa would have been 13 and change above 10.75.
Mm-hmm.
But when we won in New Westminster, the BC,
I think it was
wage
$8.50 or something at that time.
I think
it was lowest
equivalent
in the country.
to the U.S. in terms of what its size was. And I don't know if we have any kind of living wage discussions in Nova Scotia, but the wage tends to be lower out there too.
Yeah.
And there's no federal minimum wage, all set by the province, and that depends on who's controlling the government.
Governing body's decision.
That's right. So, are we still receiving a lot of inquiries about living wage campaigns as we were a year ago, or is it?
Yeah, not as many. When we were getting a lot of press, we got a lot of phone calls, so it's kind of reflective of that. But people were calling from across the country wondering how they could work on that campaign. Now we get a lot of getting healthy homes, people calling around that.
The first national campaign we're involved in was actually towards the beginning of the Acorn Canada organizing around payday lending, right? Mm-hmm. Where has that developed over the years?
Well, that was, it was initially a campaign where we wanted the payday lending industry regulated federally, but then what the federal government did is they carved out that section of the criminal code and delegated it to the provinces. But we were able to move the Liberal government in Ontario and in BC to implement regulations. In Ontario, there's the Payday Lending Act, and we were arguing for a pretty high cap on how much they could charge, and the industry was lobbying for a very low one, and they were way more resourced than we were. So it was like, you know, somewhere in the middle, kind of closer to what the industry wanted. But it was a huge victory.
What was the number they came up with?
I think it was around 20%.
And that was how long ago at this point?
That was about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago.
Because there's discussion about reigniting the campaign now in BC, it sounds like.
Yeah, and in Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, because
why is that?
well, people are looking at the like the problems with the legislation now, and we want to get back in there and see how we can improve it.
Because we're hearing what?
Well, hearing a number of things. In BC, there were a lot of complaints around that the various payday lending outfits weren't abiding by what the government had set, and same in Ontario too. Actually, and one of the an MPP from the NDP was going to introduce a private members bill here around trying to tighten it up and increase the cap on the interest rate.
It sounds like if you looked at where we began this campaign and where we are now in BC, we almost were getting some cooperation from some of the government bodies that were regulating it, sort of asking us, hey, why don't you take a look? It looks like some of the companies are trying to deadbeat this thing, and sort of inviting us back in the fight, which is rare for governments in Canada or anywhere else in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, no, they approached us. You know, we were hearing things from our members, but they approached us in BC.
So away we go, and in Ontario as well.
Well, the opposition, the party approached us, not the government.
But that's where these things sometimes start.
Yeah.
So, and what is our relationship, speaking of parties and politics, what's been our experience as a nonpartisan organization here in Canada, sort of navigating all the partisan spectrum here and getting things done?
Well, generally the opposition parties like us and the parties in power don't.
Surprise, huh? Yeah. And how has that changed over the last 8 years?
Well, federally, it was a minority government, liberal-controlled minority government when we first came in. So we actually were working a bit with them on the payday lending stuff, and then it became a conservative minority government, and then it became a conservative majority government, so we've kind of lost any traction federally. In BC, it's been a liberal majority government the whole time, but that government has been amenable to working with us on like the payday lending campaign and hopefully on the remittance campaign. And in Ontario, it's now a liberal minority government, so we're just trying to get in there right now, talk to the Ministry of Consumer Affairs about our remittance campaign. But we have a meeting on Friday, 3 p.m. See how it goes. Yeah.
And we had a lot of press around the country here recently around the private members bill around the remittance campaign. Acorn Canada has been sort of leading that fight around the world.
Yeah, our members were pressuring the opposition party, so they went to the critic of consumer affairs with the Ontario NDP and asked Jagmeet Singh, who is the MPP in Brampton, to think about doing a private members bill, because he was the appropriate person, being the critic of consumer affairs. And so he agreed, thought it was a great issue that, you know, needed to be addressed, and he introduced a private members bill with our members at Queen's Park, and we got some good press. We got endorsed in the Star and in the Ottawa Citizen and in Share and in a bunch of other papers. And
which is rare. That was
yeah.
We didn't even have that luck, particularly in payday lending. So for them to jump so quickly to support the bill was really outstanding.
Yeah, you know, and like the Star and Ottawa Citizen are, you know, pretty centrist.
Right, that's the Toronto Star is well read too. So it helps us jump in the middle of the debate. So maybe something will good happen soon.
Yeah,
we'll keep working until it does.
We'll keep it posted.
I know everybody will be following this closely. As you know, they're talking about trying to introduce something in Honduras, and we have somebody working in Mexico now to see if we can also, we could just get through the hopper on one, it gives
Yeah.
us something we could really talk about. And
Well, and the fact that the World Bank has, even said a 5% cap makes sense, helps.
yeah, we're not in some radical,
we're not radical on
swampland here. We're just saying, hey, let's do it at the World Bank. We're not protesting the World Bank. Let's go with them. Of course, and the G8, the
Yeah.
whole G8, including Canada, says they're for this. It's just now's
How
the
do you
time.
get there?
Yeah, how do you
We're
get
just
there?
showing them how to get there.
Yeah, they're saying competition.
Yeah.
Western Union and MoneyGram are saying, not so sure about that competition thing. So a lot of activity then, and partly we're seeing more happening because you've grown a huge amount here in Canada, haven't we?
Yeah, we now have 45,000 members across the country.
Which is very large in Canada. Sometimes people forget, as large as Canada is, that
Yeah.
we only have about the population of California and a couple
Yeah.
other states.
Yeah.
So 45,000 puts us, batting in the big leagues here.
Yeah.
And our coalition partners have been what kind of people here?
Pretty diverse. A lot of labor partners. We probably have about 25 different labor unions and labor bodies that support and work with the organization.
And here support has often meant direct contributions as well.
Yeah, they have financial support, and then other organizations, other not-for-profits and community organizations. We work with the Workers' Action Center in Ottawa. We work with a number of health centers, and in BC we have a bunch of partners. We work with a lot of different groups.
Environmental partners here in Toronto over the years.
Yeah, we had a partnership with Toronto Environmental Alliance for a couple years when we had a Live Green contract with the city before the Ford administration axed that. And Ecology Ottawa is a new partner with on an environmental project that we're starting, and we work with an environmental group in BC as well.
Which is always surprising because I know, the questions we were first asked when Acorn Canada began was sort of who and what we'd work with, and we've opened our arms and been embraced by everyone here.
Yeah, no, people are supportive. It's good.
So the 45,000 after 8 years, what do you see over the next 5 years in terms of the organization's development here?
Well, moving forward, we're really looking at what happened in Cape Breton and how to replicate that. Trying to support the people that approach us in various communities with, where we have a bit of the policy research already done, and if people are interested in building a base of people, if that matches with what they want to work on, then we can support them, relatively remotely. So our Healthy Homes bylaw that we've been working on, our board moved on a campaign where they want to have it like a Healthy Homes minimum standard across the country, saying every municipality above a certain size should have a Healthy Homes bylaw. So that, or anywhere else that people are interested in, working on a provincial campaign that we're already working on, that's easy. Or trying to, or people, if they're interested in working on other campaigns, if we could support them, if it fits under a mandate.
Because we actually now have some membership representation in almost every province, don't we?
Yeah, we have at least, 1 or 2 contacts of people who are interested in, following the organization, not financially supporting it, but a provisional member in, every province and territory. Clustered. We have a bunch in Winnipeg, a bunch in Montreal, a bunch in Edmonton, in BC and Ontario, where we have a bigger presence, in a lot of the medium-sized cities. We have, little clusters of, I think it was 34 communities across the country. We have anywhere from 20 to 70, contacts of people that are interested.
So devising some sort of adaptive organizing model, whether it's the Nova Scotia, Cape Breton thing or something, is a big priority for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I heard some discussions about how, we do tax centers here.
Yeah, we have a very big tax site in BC. I think we're going to come close to doing 3,000 taxes there this year, and Ottawa's got a pretty big site. getting close to 1,000 taxes, and
There was some discussion of using that sort of sustainable tax program to help on this expansion as well, wasn't there?
yeah. Yeah, if we can do kind of service-based organizing, that would potentially be a way to, get some people coming into a tax site and then talking to them about campaigns they want to work on, and then kind of building their capacity from there.
What else is on your mind in terms of challenges you think the organization has to face, and where you have to bring your staff? And
Well, we're all, and it's always getting easier, but we're, remotely located, so staff are in clusters of, 2 to 4 organizers in the cities where we have offices, and so, trying to bring people together to kind of move forward on campaigns and stuff without incurring huge costs around like flying people out from BC is always a challenge, but with technology, communication's always getting better and easier. Moving forward, we're trying to, we don't have a huge policy department, so as we move into this remittance campaign, with the payday lending campaign, we fought, we won, and then it was a lot of like policy research, working with the government, and we don't want to not be at that table because they've invited us to sit at that table, but when you're sitting at that table, they're like, can you sit at this table for like, 8 hours a day, for like a week around that, helping like flesh out the policy research. So that's a bit of a challenge for us.
well, especially because here we've used sort of our volunteer army to do so many research and policy for the front work, the early spade work, that we don't exactly have a dedicated staff. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And so communications also seems to be a priority you're looking at closer.
Yeah, we're looking at figuring out how to expand like our online presence. We do a lot of good work, and we're trying to figure out a way to share it better with the rest of Canada or the world. And so we're redeveloping our website and trying to get some better action components in there, and that's exciting.
Because you think that's a little bit weaker than we need it to be here.
Yeah, I think that there's opportunity there to improve that.
And that might help in this expansion organizing model as well that you're thinking about, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make it more of a tool for your organization.
Yeah, a tool for Cape Breton, so then they have their own page and they can kind of use that in action components on around the stuff that they're doing out there.
Anything else on the short list, in the free minutes you have in your day?
No, just, fundraising is always a priority. But, focusing on the campaigns that we kind of got a bit of traction on is kind of the focus right now.
I heard you emphasize a lot leadership development in a meeting we were at recently. What do you see happening in that area?
We're always trying to figure out how to make it a bit more structured. Where one thing that would help us is if we could figure out how to capture participation in the, if we have 45,000 members, we can't, we're not dealing with a group of like 40 people, right? So we need to have a way of kind of tracking participation so we can know who to like prioritize for different things that they may be interested in. So we're trying to figure out a way of working on that with our database. We came out with a membership manual on leadership development that was partnered with the OFL. That was about 3 years ago, and it had a 2-year calendar in it. So, everyone who joined the organization got the membership manual, and it listed like, our areas like tax sites and leadership schools and all the kind of different things people could participate in. So we need to redo that, but always trying to figure out a way to like structure that a bit better.
Well, that's going to be exciting if we see some development there. I've often heard you, in your sort of elevator description of what is Acorn Canada, describe it as a community union. What do you mean by that?
Well, we're essentially a community union.
Oh, I repeated it exactly then.
So we're a membership-based organization for low and moderate income people, and where a union would work, traditionally anyway, in a workplace, we work in a community. So each local chapter in Toronto, for example, there's the Weston chapter. The Weston chapter is like a geographic area. The membership was, engaged by door knocking, or by the, the members engaging their friends and their neighbors, and they have like a chair and a co-chair and a secretary elected out of each chapter. So it's essentially applying a union organizing methodology into a community setting.
And we're now embarking on a fairly unique project where, as a community union, as you're describing, we're now going the opposite way and injecting some of our community methodology into organizing unorganized informal workers, or at least that's part of the pilot discussion we're having.
Right, yeah, I know exactly. A lot of our members, maybe the first issue that they bring up when you're standing in their apartment is, the fact that they might have cockroaches in their kitchen. But at the end of the day, the increase in like precarious unemployment and lack of access to good jobs is a huge issue for our membership. We're really involved in the fight to raise the minimum wage in Ontario to $10. So our members have brought up these workplace issues, and we're moving forward on a pilot how to work on them to like effectively win some victories on workplace issues.
And that may involve, helping assemble associations of workers in categories that are hard for traditional union organizing models to reach.
Right.
Office workers, domestic workers, people that don't have a fixed workplace,
Right.
that we see in the community that you'd have trouble finding in a workplace.
Right.
So that's something we'll hear more about in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it's exciting.
What else would you want to add in this sort of general overview of Acorn Canada? Fun, fun, fun.
Yeah.